I was 12 when I decided I wanted to make a little money of my own. At that age, you don't think about taxes or real jobs. You just want some pocket change to spend on candy or whatever random junk seems important. Babysitting was the easiest way for me to do that. My neighbors trusted me, and since I lived in a quiet little cul-de-sac, parents figured nothing bad could ever happen around here. One family in particular, just a few houses down from mine, hired me regularly. They had a little girl we'll call Sally. Her parents worked long hours, often late into the night, so I'd come over after dinner, play with Sally, and tuck her into bed before waiting for her parents to return. Honestly, it became routine, comfortable, almost boring. But one night, everything changed. That evening felt normal at first. I walked over to their house just as the streetlights flickered on, carrying my backpack with a few coloring books and snacks. The air was crisp, a little colder than usual, and the houses along the block looked like they were holding their breath. Lights off, curtains drawn, like the whole neighborhood had turned in early. Inside, things were warm and bright. Sally ran to me right away, her little feet slapping against the wooden floor as she squealed my name. She was always energetic, always smiling. For a while, we just played in the living room. Dolls, puzzles, the usual games, until it was time to start winding down. That's when I decided to get her a bedtime snack. She loved crackers before bed, so I scooped her up in my arms and headed toward the kitchen. The moment I flipped the switch and turned off the living room light, the house seemed to change. The warm brightness gave way to heavy shadows that clung to the walls and corners, the kind of shadows that made the silence feel thicker. My footsteps echoed louder than they should have as I carried Sally down the short hallway toward the kitchen. And that's when it happened. Sally's little hand, which had been loosely hooked around my neck, suddenly lifted. Her tiny finger stretched out into the darkness of the living room we just left. Her voice was soft but steady. "Who's that tall man?" At first I froze, thinking she was joking. Kids say weird things all the time, and she'd been on a princess kick that week, making up imaginary characters, inventing stories. But there was something about the way she said it that made my skin prickle. It wasn't playful, it wasn't a giggle, it was matter of fact, like she was describing something that was standing right there. I turned my head slowly, heart pounding in my ears. The living room was dark now, but not completely. A faint orange glow from the street lamp outside seeped in through the blinds. My eyes strained against the gloom, searching. At first, nothing. Just furniture, the outline of toys scattered on the floor. And then, I saw him. At the far end of the room, just beyond the glow, was a shape, a figure. He was tall, unnaturally tall. His head nearly grazed the ceiling, his shoulders broad. He wasn't moving at first, just standing, watching. My breath caught in my throat. For a second, I told myself it was just a shadow, some trick of the streetlight bending through the curtains. But then, as if my fear had called him to life, he stepped forward. The floor creaked beneath his weight. Sally clung tighter to me, burying her face in my shoulder. My legs locked, but every instinct screamed to run. His steps were slow, deliberate, closing the space between us, one measured movement at a time. I don't even remember making the decision. One moment I was frozen, the next I was sprinting. My feet pounded against the hallway floor as I bolted toward the front door. I didn't look back. I couldn't. All I knew was that if I hesitated, if I gave him even a second to catch up, something terrible would happen. I burst through the front door into the night air, nearly tripping over the porch steps as I clutched Sally against me. My lungs burned, my chest ached, but I ran faster than I ever had in my life, all the way down the street to my own house. When I threw open the door, my mom was sitting in the living room watching TV. She looked up, startled as I stumbled inside, breathless and pale, still holding Sally. I tried to explain. The man, the shadows, the way he followed us, but the words tangled in my mouth. My mom's face shifted from alarm to disbelief. She shook her head, told me I was imagining things. "You spooked yourself," she said. "Houses feel different in the dark." That's all. But I knew what I saw. I knew what Sally saw. And that night, I refused to let her out of my arms until her parents came home. Now listen, the scariest part? A few days later, I learned the truth. There had been a man in the house that night. He wasn't a ghost or a shadow trick or some figment of a child's imagination. He was real. Sally's parents told my mom he had broken in through the back door. He stole a few valuables, jewelry, electronics, and their family cat, just carried it out of the house with him. But I still remember the way Sally whispered, "Who's that tall man?" in the dark hallway. The way his footsteps echoed as he moved closer. The way my body locked with terror before instinct kicked in. That was the night I learned monsters don't always hide under your bed. Sometimes they're standing right in front of you, watching, waiting. Before we dive into story 2, if you enjoyed chilling horror stories, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Echo Horror. It's completely free, and it really helps the channel grow. Now let's get into story 2. When I was in high school, I babysat for some families in my neighborhood to make some extra money. I was pretty close with the kids since I had been babysitting them for years. One night, I get a text saying they were a friend of one of the families I babysit for. Let's call them Jane. "Hey, it's Jane Blank gave me your number. Would you be able to babysit for a couple hours Saturday night at 8? She asked me, and I agree, and she gives me the address. Although they live pretty far, I stick to my word. Saturday night rolls around and I take a bus to get there. I live in a pretty small town and am familiar with most of the roads, but for some reason this home was hard to find. I walk down the gravel driveway and am met with Jane, who had already been waiting for me at the door. I greet her. The home is cold and dark but spacious. The floorboards creaked under us while she showed me around and gave me clear instructions. No TV after 8:30. Claire is 9 now, so I expect her to follow instructions. But if you could make sure she's in bed before 9, that would be great. She leads me into the kitchen to show me where the snacks were in case I got hungry. When we get into the kitchen, I spot something in the corner of my eye. Something was peeking at me at the end of the corridor. I look over to see that it's a little girl wearing a red dress. That must be Claire, I say. "Oh, you must be special. She rarely ever comes out of her room anymore." I glance at the same spot again, and the girl was gone. When the mother leaves, I walk up the stairs to say hi to Claire. Her door is locked, so I knock lightly. Soft classical music is playing, so I leave her alone for a while. I'm a very nosy person, so I took the opportunity to look around the old house. It was pretty big. There were so many hidden nooks and doors. After a while of exploring, I look at the time. It's 8:47. I should make sure Claire is getting ready for bed. I walk back up the stairs, but before I can get to the top, the little girl is sitting on the steps. "It's bedtime, Claire," I say, but no response. She doesn't move or say anything. Then I hear the bedroom door open. "Hi, you must be my new babysitter," says a girl wearing a purple pajama set. I look back down, and the girl on the steps isn't there anymore. In complete confusion, I say, "I think your sister's playing hide and seek." Claire looks at me confused and says, "I don't have a sister." At this point, I'm completely freaked out. I laugh it off and tuck her into bed and go back downstairs. Jane didn't mention having another child either. Who was the little girl? At this point, I must be going crazy. I watch some TV downstairs to clear my head. I put something random on, making sure it's on a low volume. Around 11:30, I hear crunching in the kitchen as if someone had been eating cooking in the pantry. I expect that it's Claire who had snuck out of her room for a late-night snack. When I walk into the kitchen, the pantry door is open with a Chips Ahoy box on the floor with tons of crumbs. But no Claire. I find a broom in the corner and begin sweeping up the mess. "Claire, no sneaking food, it's bedtime," I say. While sweeping the last few cookie bits, I hear a faint giggle behind me. I bolt around and see a trail of crumbs down the dark corridor, and at the end of the trail was the girl in the red dress. At this point, I know I'm not insane. She was really standing a couple meters away from me. "Fuck this," I murmur. I slowly place the broom back in the corner. She's still standing there, giggling from time to time. which felt like a fucking lifetime. After a few seconds, she turns and runs into the living room. I stay in the kitchen until the mom comes home, and I don't bother telling her anything I needed to get out of that house. She pays me and I bolt out of there so fast. I am never babysitting for her again. It was a chilly October night, the kind that makes the air feel sharp in your lungs, the kind where every leaf that scrapes across the pavement sounds like footsteps. My friend Alexandria and I had agreed to babysit together for the Doyle's children. Their parents were attending a company dinner party and wouldn't be home until late. At first, it felt cozy, safe. The Doyle house was warm, lit with the soft glow of lamps and decorated for Halloween. Paper pumpkins taped to the windows, a bowl of candy on the counter, and little plastic ghosts dangling from the stair railing. It felt like the kind of night you could relax in, even with the responsibility of watching the kids. Alexandria and I settled into the living room with them, flipping on the TV to the 31 Days of Halloween marathon. The kids were curled up on the couch with blankets, their eyes wide at the flashing scenes on screen, half scared, half thrilled. Alexandria and I had even made hot apple cider for everyone, the smell of cinnamon and cloves filling the air. It was, by all accounts, a typical fall night, until the doorbell rang. The sharp chime echoed through the house, cutting through the laughter and cozy atmosphere like a knife. I frowned, set down my mug, and got up to answer it. Alexandria looked at me over the rim of her cup. "Probably trick-or-treaters," she said. But when I opened the door, no one was there. The porch light buzzed faintly above me, illuminating the empty front step and the quiet street beyond. The night was still, the air heavy with the smell of damp leaves. I leaned out, scanning the shadows, expecting to see kids running off, giggling from a prank. But the street was empty. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. A little unsettled, I shut the door and locked it, brushing off the unease that crept into my chest. Probably just ding-dong ditchers, I told myself. Kids being kids. 5 minutes passed. The cider was cooling in our mugs. The kids were whispering nervously at the TV. And just as I was beginning to relax again, the doorbell rang. This time I moved quickly, my pulse quickening. I was determined to catch whoever was messing with us. I yanked the door open, ready to shout into the night. Again, no one. But something was different this time. As I glanced down, I noticed the edge of the welcome mat was slightly lifted. Something was tucked underneath. My hands trembled as I bent down and pulled it free. It was a note. The handwriting was messy, jagged, almost rushed. "You'll have to be quicker than that," it read. "How about you check upstairs?" For a moment, my brain refused to process the words. Then slowly, I lifted my head and looked back inside. That's when I saw it. On the landing at the top of the stairs, just beyond the reach of the light, a shadow moved. A tall, dark figure that lingered for only a heartbeat before slipping out of sight. My heart froze in my chest. No one was upstairs. Everyone, Alexandria, the kids, they were all in the living room with me. I didn't think, I just acted. I bolted into the living room, grabbed Alexandria by the arm, and hissed, "We have to go!" Now she looked startled, confused. But when she saw my face, she didn't argue. I scooped up the kids, dragging them toward the door, their little bodies heavy and panicked as they asked what was happening. Out on the porch under the harsh glow of the light, I shoved the note into Alexandria's hands. Her face drained of color as she read it. "Upstairs," she whispered. "I saw someone," I choked out. "On the landing. There's someone in the house." We didn't wait. We sprinted to the next-door neighbor's house, pounding on their door until they answered. I must have looked wild-eyed, clutching the kids and shaking as I explained what had just happened. The neighbors ushered us in immediately, locking the door behind us. The police came quickly. Their flashlights sliced through the Doyle's darkened house, beams of white bouncing across the walls as they investigated. When the officers finally returned, their faces were grave. They told us they had found evidence in the upstairs bedroom: duct tape, rope, a steak knife, laid out deliberately like someone had been preparing. They also found the back window forced open, the frame splintered, the lock broken. The words the officer spoke next will haunt me forever. "You kids were lucky. If you hadn't gotten out when you did, we'd be looking at a very different situation tonight. The Doyles' parents came home earlier than expected after being contacted. When they arrived, the horror on their faces was indescribable. They packed up their children immediately and went to stay with family who lived 20 minutes away. Alexandria and I ended up back at my house, but neither of us slept a wink. We sat together in silence, the note lying between us on the table, its jagged letters burned into our memories. That was 5 years ago, but still, on cold autumn nights, when the wind rattles against the windows and the world outside feels too quiet, my mind goes back to that evening, to the sound of the doorbell echoing through the Doyles' house, to the shadow on the landing, to the note that told me exactly where to look. And I wonder, what if we hadn't left the house? What if I had gone upstairs? What if we had been just a little slower? The thought chills me every single time. I thank God every day that we escaped. But deep down, I know we weren't just lucky, we were spared. And I still don't know why. And that's a wrap for today's video. I hope you enjoyed these chilling stories. If you did, don't forget to drop a comment with your favorite one, hit that like button, and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales coming your way. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.